All right. Joining us from his vehicle once again, it is none other than Mr. Mitchell Paige here on a Monday. Very excited to continue to talk more about an undefeated Indiana Hoosiers football team. And before I get too deep into it, Mitchell, I just want to ask you, how'd you enjoy the game this Saturday, seeing Indiana finally face some real adversity and really respond in probably the best way possible?
I guess technically it was adversity, but I'm at the point where I'm watching Indiana just waiting for the inevitable, which is just pounding a team into the ground repeatedly, relentlessly, until they can't breathe anymore. That seems to be what this team does no matter what. It was, I guess, cool to see them losing. Like, okay, let's see how we react. There's been teams around the country that get down 10-0 and by 25. Look at Texas A&M yesterday, who everybody thinks is better than Indiana. They go to South Carolina, get down early, and then get smoked, run out of the building. Clemson, same thing. Get down early, smoked, run out of their own building. And Indiana just doesn't do that. They keep the pedal down, and it feels like they throw 100 haymakers a game. It's so impressive to just watch them continually execute, and I don't know. It's amazing, but being ranked 8th in the AP poll still feels too low somehow. And how cool of a spot is that to be in?
It is a cool spot to be in. And I was already trying to think of what should I expect from the college football playoff rankings on Tuesday. I tend to think that there's going to be somewhere between that 6 to 8 range. Anything higher, and when I say higher, I mean worse than 8, I feel like would be a travesty and more disrespect on Indiana's part. I don't think I expect that from the committee, but again, there's really no current expectations from them because we haven't seen what they value, who they truly think is good at this point in time. So, I mean, a lot of it's a wait-and-see game for that specifically, but I think if they're anywhere between 6, 7, and 8, anywhere between with those numbers, then you should be satisfied. And if they're better, then, you know, more power to the Hoosiers because that shows that they really value what they've done on the field so far.
Yeah, and you got to think 6, 7, 8, that's the playoff committee, and I don't think they're making brackets just yet, but if you have a 6, 7, or 8 seed, that probably means that you made it to the Big Ten championship game.
Because you'd be hosting one of the first round games in one of those scenarios.
The scenario plays out that you beat Ohio State, made it to the Big Ten championship, and then lost to Oregon, most likely in the Big Ten championship. And depending on how other things shake out, there's a chance they could be that 5 seed if that is the case. But 6, 7, 8 is a really good spot to be. Who knows when we get to that? But I'm going to start what I'm about to say by saying it seems like Indiana already does this, but you just have to make sure that just beat whoever's in front of you. Continue to beat the crap out of everybody that's in front of you. I feel bad for Michigan. That's tough. You're supposed to be the big boys. You got all this tradition. You're going to come in and get dog walked by the Hoosiers. But then this is now more from a fan perspective and trying to understand how they're rating these teams. The biggest problem that I have with the ratings, there's a couple teams that I think Indiana is by far better than. Penn State is the one at the top of the list. I was watching Penn State yesterday. Ohio State is good, I guess, but how can you watch that team, look at their schedule, and think that Indiana is by far superior team than them? And I've finally started to subscribe to the theory, and I know it's always been there, but it took me to this week to get there, to where if Indiana, the players at Indiana had on a Penn State uniform, this team would be ranked number 1 or 2 in the country. Penn State doesn't have a single win that's better than an Indiana win. Not one. They beat a so overrated Illinois team that's now getting beat by everybody. They beat USC, who just lost to Washington. I don't understand how you can justify keeping that team ahead of Indiana in the polls. And now it doesn't matter. Just keep winning if you're in the building. But from an outside perspective, it's really, you just hope that the committee doesn't do it the way that the AP poll does, where
Yeah.
I heard it described really well that, and it makes sense. It's kind of like a NASCAR race. It matters where you started, right? Like, you can't, just because you had a really good race doesn't mean that you automatically get in first if you started in last, which is probably close to where Indiana started. So while I do understand that that's kind of how it has to work, you have to go up gradually. It's just hard for me to see a couple of the teams ahead of them that are ahead of them in the AP poll. And the
it would
coaches
honestly
poll
be,
well.
it would be a big disappointment to see the college football playoff rankings basically look like a carbon copy of the AP poll, because at that point, what are we doing? The college football playoff rankings, the reason that you don't get them until this point in the season is because they're supposed to be truly based off of what's been going on this year and this year alone, whereas the beginning of the AP poll, pretty much its entirety is based off of the previous year and expectations with rosters that are, you know, incoming for the upcoming season. And that's literally what the AP poll week in and week out is based on, because there's no gap between weeks. Like, okay, we'll wait and see what a couple of teams look like before we do another poll. No, it keeps going continuously. This is late in the season because you're supposed to have a better idea of who the true best teams in the country are. And I think that's why you're going to see some shakeups, at least when it comes to comparing things to the AP poll. And it would be unfortunate if that's not the case.
Yeah, it's supposed to be, regardless of the uniform, who's the best team? Who's played the best? Who's beat their opponents the worst? Who's been the most consistent? That's what it's supposed to be. That's why we went to this format. And you'd hope that, unlike the AP poll, and it's hard to expect them to watch every game, but for the college football playoff, you'd hope that all of these people that are voting on this and selecting these teams have at least watched all the teams play. And I don't think you get that necessarily in the AP poll. There could be a lot of biases and different things, but hopefully it's objective. And yeah, I think 6 to 8 is a really good spot for Indiana to be. Anything lower than that, start to ask some questions. Because I'm tired of listening to, they haven't played anybody. The teams that we beat are beating
I think Jeremy
teams.
Gray from Indiana put this on Twitter, says every team that Indiana is going up against is the most dangerous team in the country until Indiana beats them by 30 points, and then they suck.
Correct. Everybody talking about Nebraska. People were talking about Nebraska in the college football playoff before we beat them by 7 touchdowns. And then you talk about Washington. Washington's sneaky. They beat Michigan. They got all this talent. They got a good quarterback. They score all these points. They got all these yards. And then we smoke them, and then they're nothing. Michigan State running the ball a lot better. Ran it all over Michigan. Ran it all over Iowa. They're dangerous. They're going to be good. And then you beat them by 5 touchdowns. Score 47
unanswered. Minus 36 rushing yards, by the way.
Yes, minus. Indiana. I mean, that's a hilarious stat. I don't know if I've actually gotten to where I believe that. I watched it with my own 2 eyes. I know that it's true, but that is such a crazy stat that you need some time to digest it. But I'm tired of listening to it. I'm tired of it. Like, there's 3 teams I think that have played anyone. If you really look at their schedules, everyone stinks according to everyone. All they've done is beat the teams that they're playing by 100. What else can they do? And if you're going to get disrespected for a schedule, Ohio State hasn't really beat anybody except Penn State. Penn State definitely hasn't beat anybody. It's hard for me to justify the schedule naysayers.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll try to move on from this because, again, Indiana's done their part in taking care of everybody that they've played, and now, I mean, I guess looking ahead, they have it's really the perfect triumvirate for Curt Cignetti, just because it's all 3 of the teams that he called out at Assembly Hall, and I love. If it were any other season, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, but I just love that. Everything, honestly, it feels like a movie, right, Mitchell? There's nothing about this season that doesn't, and you have to date it all the way back to the day Curt Cignetti arrived, because there's not a single thing that he didn't say that wasn't considered at the time kind of like a hot take. And he's followed through on everything. And I guess the last thing to do to complete the prophecy is prove that Purdue, Michigan, and Ohio State suck and move on to the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Although I did see at Big Ten Media Days, it's been resurfacing on Twitter a little bit that
yes,
he was talking about the Big Ten championship, and a lot of people were tweeting Kurt Cignetti talking about the Big Ten championship period. They're expected to be bottom 2 in the Big Ten. Like, just demeaning whatever he's saying. I mean, you don't even need a scriptwriter for it.
No.
He comes in, he's had all this success, but now comes to a program in turmoil, and that, I think, is putting it mildly. The whole team's in the transfer portal. He's got no players. You can just picture him go out for the first practice, and there's like 8 guys on the field because everyone else is in the portal. And then you just have this magical run that, I mean, you hope is sustainable, feels sustainable. It's not like they've – and I think we've talked about this before. The most impressive thing to me is not that they're creating a bunch of chaos on defense and having turnovers and returning kicks for touchdowns and winning a bunch of 50-50 balls like they've won in the past. This is just demolition after demolition with traditional ball.
Yeah.
With players that aren't 5-star players. Now, I think they're really freaking good. I think I'd put those guys up against anybody, but it feels very repeatable. So, I it's magic now, but hopefully.
I think one thing that kind of gave me some extra validation that, like, is this team really as good as they keep showing is, so I watched this video. This video is about 10 days old. It's Urban Meyer talking with Jerry DiNardo about Indiana's spread option offense and how, if executed properly, it is virtually impossible to stop. And I think we've seen that. I mean, there's no reason that isn't a true statement when you look at the numbers that Indiana puts up offensively week in and week out. I'm sure during the offseason when they were installing this type of offense, the number one goal was to make sure, like, hey, if we're all on the same page with this, it may take you guys a few weeks to, like, fully buy in potentially, but we're going to be hard to beat. And right now things are clearly proving themselves with the fact that they're still unbeaten and going for a potential spot in the Big Ten and the college football playoffs.
Yeah, it's a clinic. I think I tweeted that on Saturday. It's just a clinic. It's teach tape. It feels at times like they're playing routes on air. Guys are running wide open. And when you operate that effectively, it can be a double-edged sword. I think and I'm not comparing our offenses when I was in school to this offense. I think these guys are a lot better. But when we would get on people, we could score in a hurry. And, yeah, we were virtually unstoppable at times. But on the flip side, we would score really fast because we were unstoppable. And then the defense is on the field the whole game. So you're always playing with time of possession and getting your guys a rest and scoring, continuing to score. We got in a lot of shootouts, a lot of 50 to 45 games. What's been so incredible is their ability to control the tempo while still feeling like they're on the front foot and feeling like they're pressing down on defenses and maintaining that unstoppability while giving the defense, it feels like, a little time to adjust and make different calls. Because what we would do when we were in school is get one play that's positive and then go fast. So you couldn't make adjustments. So we were going to get base defense. So the reads became really easy, and then there's no way to stop us.
Okay. These
guys take their time. So you're getting calls in from the sideline on defense, and you still can't stop. That's what's so unbelievable. And then you pair it with the defense and a defensive line that is just playing out of their shoes, out of their skin. I don't even like that. Watching them terrorize the backfield on Saturday. This is not an offensive line from, the FCS.
Yeah.
This is Michigan State, who's won 4 games in Big Ten on a Big Ten schedule. Like, they've won 4 games this year. They just took it to Michigan on the ground. They smoked Iowa. And Indiana they might as well not have even been there.
Is there anything specifically about Michigan that you think Indiana needs to watch out for? I don't know how much you've watched of Michigan, but was there anything that maybe in passing that you think could give them an advantage, even though that they haven't looked the best this year?
I think that's the biggest thing that can give them an advantage is they look like trash.
Lost in my mouse.
Yeah, you're good. They look like trash. It looks like they have no chance to score any points ever. And I think they're getting a little better with their 2-quarterback system. I was sad to see Jack Tuttle retired. Good for him. Definitely take care of yourself first, but would have been cool to have that reunion. But I think that what they do on defense, they are always going to have a good D-line and a couple good DBs. That's what's going to scare you. I think I haven't watched them a ton this year, but with Harbaugh and Sherrone Moore's understudy of Harbaugh, they always played man coverage, said our guys are better than your guys, and brought a lot of pressure. So I think that if they're still doing that, I will be the first to admit I haven't been able to stomach watching Michigan. They're just brutal to watch. If they're still doing that,
to me is also kind of like the biggest key for Indiana is, and it's, we sound like broken records, of course, but get off to a fast start like you've done most of the season so far, because this Michigan offense is going to struggle putting points on the board if you put pressure on them early.
It feels like if you get a 2-touchdown lead, the game's kind of over. Is what it feels like. Which
is weird to say against any Michigan team.
Yeah, if you don't let the game get ugly, Michigan's going to try to muck it up. They're going to be nasty. They've always been a little bit nasty before, after kind of plays, and a little bit. It's easy to get drawn into what they're doing. If you're catching what I'm saying, not dirty necessarily, but they're trying to get under your skin. They're trying to get you to get chippy. Staying out of those stupid little games. I think this game, more than any game, is a do your job game. Like, execute what you need to do individually more so than anything else. Because if you allow them to suck you in and make it ugly, then you got a dogfight. But if you don't allow that to happen, I mean, this game, I saw the spread at 12.5.
Which, by the way, is other than when Indiana played their non-conference schedule, is this their largest spread so far of the season? I was thinking it was.
In a while,
I can't think. No, Northwestern was around 14, was it not?
I don't know.
It was maybe it's not the biggest, but either way, I did see this. Indiana hasn't been favored against Michigan since I think the 60s, something along those lines. I don't have the number right in front of me, the year. But the fact that Indiana, even being favored, and not only being favored by double digits, that's
I would guess that spread gets to about 14.5.
I think it went from 12 to 14 pretty quickly from what I saw on
Is it already
14? Line was released. Well, if I had my mouse that for some reason decided to run away from me a couple of minutes ago, I'd look it up. But
okay. Shoot, if it's 14, I should have got in on 12. I did not. Usually I make my bets on Monday, but yeah, I mean, it's a game that can get ugly on both sides of the spectrum. I think there's a chance that if you allow Michigan to muck it up, it can be a dogfight. If you don't allow Michigan to muck it up, this can be another 50-10 type game.
And also, this is I thought I'd mentioned this by now, but I don't think I have. This is essentially a college football playoff play-in game if you're Indiana, because at that point, the only thing left on your schedule is Ohio State and Purdue. And I believe the talk for most of the season, and I hope this reigns true, is that no matter what happens in Ohio State, if you take care of business against Purdue in the final game, an 11-1 record should get you in the playoff in some way, shape, or form. I would hate to be proven wrong about that, but I don't see any reason why this can't be considered a sort of a play-in type of a game for the Hoosiers.
We'll find out tomorrow, or whenever, if this releases.
That's true,
tomorrow.
Based on what the committee thinks of Indiana. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, if they get to 11 or 12, this is not a play-in game, and you're probably going to have to beat Ohio State. If you're at 6-8, then yeah, kind of. Barring any crazy miracle surprise in the last game of the season, put up a fight against Ohio State, and you're probably in. But I'm not ready to say put up a fight against Ohio State. Everything I've seen tells me whatever the line is, hammer the Hoosiers. money line if you're getting money. I don't know, based on, and I could be a homer, whatever, but just based on what you see, I don't think there's really much to exploit on offense, defense, or special teams for Indiana. There's a lot to exploit for Ohio State. I don't think the quarterback's very good. I don't think the offensive line's very good. They've got some special players on the outside, and they've got a couple good running backs. I think they're solid on defense, but they got more holes than Indiana does. I think who you bet in that game will depend on how much you value Ohio Stadium.
And the one other thing, too, that will, and really it'll be two teams fighting for different things, or I mean, really the same thing, but in different fashions. But Ohio State needs to beat Indiana. I think that needs to be said, too. Indiana doesn't necessarily have to beat them. It would kind of lock up some stuff for you if you do beat them. But Ohio State will be playing with the realization that they need to win that game.
Yeah, but then you beat Ohio State if you're Indiana and you're playing in the Big Ten Championship with a chance to get a bye.
Yeah.
So
there's two totally different ways to look at it.
But Ohio State will be, my guess is if they get beat by Indiana, they'll drop to, that 10-11 spot. They won't play on conference championship weekend, and we're running out of spots for teams. Yeah. So
they'll be at the mercy of everybody else at that point if they have two losses.
Exactly. You lose control of your destiny. So take care of business against Michigan. I think that it's a take care of business game. Do your job. I don't believe they have the firepower.
I've said it all year. Sharon Moore's a bum, and I mean he hasn't proven me otherwise so far.
Yeah. And they look mostly incompetent in a lot of phases, but they will be good on defense. They will be really physical, and it'll be up to Indiana up front. They've done it all year, but just to continue to step up to that challenge and impose your will, because the game's won at the line of scrimmage. That's why Indiana has been so successful. We can talk about the quarterback. We can talk about the wide receivers. They've won the game with their offensive line and their front seven on defense. That's been the most impressive part of the team. And you've got a quarterback that could be in a Heisman conversation. So I think that's saying a lot about the guys up front. But it's an opportunity to take it to a team that people generally see as blue blood. They should be good. They should be beating everybody. And even though they're a little down this year, it's a notch in the belt with a marquee program, national title, defending champs. Go smack them around for 60 minutes and take a break, get ready for the big game.
That's true. We have one more bye week. I keep forgetting about the second bye week that's coming up here. Yeah, so
I'm hoping that we get I'm really excited about the bye week because I have to go to Arizona next week.
That's good timing. That's a hell of a good timing right there.
I fly back the Saturday of Ohio State. So I'm hoping it's a night game, because if it is, I think I get in at like 10 o'clock and I'm going to go to the game if you want to go.
Oh, man. A trip up to Columbus to take on the Buckeyes. Wouldn't that be something? Yes, I've been to Ohio Stadium one time, and it was not for a game. I was able to find my way inside an empty Ohio Stadium, and it is, I mean, it's something. If you've never been, I mean, you've been there. You played there. What the hell am I thinking?
Yes.
But, outside of being on the field itself, it is definitely something to, step into from the stands. That's for sure.
Yeah, we didn't get the crazy Michigan crowd that's probably in there, but it was sold out. One of the most satisfying feelings, scoring a touchdown, telling everybody, just calm down, be quiet, you all in the stands. It's very satisfying.
Oh, man. All right, we'll go and wrap this thing up today. They do have a chance to do something special, and basically, like that will be the
got a chance.
I hate to say it, it doesn't make well, I'm getting ahead of myself when I say this. If you win that game, it kind of, I don't want to say diminishes the Purdue game, because at that point you're like, wow, we're playing for a perfect season. You get to do it against your rival potentially. That's really what it is at that point. But I did throw out this is a terrible thing to end the segment with, but imagine being 11-0 and finding a way to lose to Purdue in your final game of the season. There
ain't no way. I'd run out there and start slicing ankles.
Yeah.
You cannot allow that. You just cannot. That's not even a possibility. There's no world where that
I shouldn't have said it right.
There's no world where that happens. None. Those guys stink. They will continue to stink. Their city stinks. They just stink all around. We cannot lose to them ever again.
Well, there
Not
you
while
have
Sig's
it.
in the building.
Not while Sig's here. All right, Mitchell. I appreciate your time as always. We'll go ahead and put a bow on this one and do it again next week.
Let's do it. Go Hoosiers.